Welcome, everyone, to Full Sail Partners LinkedIn Live session titled Hear from Your Peers How to Monitor Your Project Financial Health. To kick things off, let's start with a quick question for our audience. So, those that are just joining us, a couple of things before we ask this question. I wanted to let you know that we have noticed that sometimes we don't see your comments. So, we are not ignoring you, just know that. And so we have noticed some issues on the LinkedIn application, and it might be because you're on your desktop, or it might be because of you're on an Android. I don't know what the issues are, but I just wanted to let you know that we are not ignoring you. But we would like for you to be engaged today. So our first question is, have you ever experienced challenges or frustrations when it comes to knowing your project financials? So give us a thumbs up for a yes and a thumbs down for a no. So now let's introduce our esteemed guests. We have Kris Johnson, Operations Manager from KW Engineering, and Rana Blair, a seasoned principal consultant at Full Sail Partners. Kris and Rana, could you please introduce yourselves? Maybe Kris, you can go first.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. First of all, I just want to say a big shout out and thank you to the Full Sail team. They are a stellar group of extremely intelligent individuals, and they really make work fun. So thank you for having me. So I'm Kris Johnson. I'm an operations manager at KW Engineering. We are an engineering firm that specializes in decarbonization and electrification solutions for commercial buildings. I've been there for about 15 years and in the energy industry for 20. I started as an accidental computer programmer because I bailed on my computer science degree to get a business degree and ended up coming out of college with a programming job. It's transitioned into marketing and now into operations, which is really a perfect fit for me because I get to leverage my expertise in both of those areas to really drive efficiency in our business processes and, most importantly, accurate reporting and profitable outcomes. So thanks again.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. And Rana?
All right, some of you know me. I'm Rana Blair. I'm a principal consultant here at Full Sail Partners, coming up on my 10th year in May of this year. I've got 28 years being all about projects. And although my background was accounting and finance, I am 100% devoted to helping to improve the project management function around all of our firms. As Kris said to me earlier today, we're here to excite and educate. So hopefully you'll enjoy your time with us.
Oh, Sarah has gone muted.
Yep, I muted myself because of the bell in the background, and I forgot to unmute myself, and I realized that it said you're muted. So thank you for that notification. And so thank you both for being here. And let's take a moment to share any audience engagements that we might have. So maybe you can add, I can restate the question, and anybody that wants to provide some comments. Have you ever experienced challenges or frustrations when it comes to knowing your project financials? So we're just looking for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And so far, I don't see anything, but we're hoping that you guys get more interactive and engaged with us. So as you continue to join, just give us those thumbs ups and thumbs down. And in the meantime, Kris, let's get started in some questions. And so could you please describe how your firm monitored the financial status of your projects before you began working with Rana at Full Sail Partners?
Absolutely, Sarah. So before we started working with Rana, we were in Vision. And I will say that our project financial status monitoring was limited at best. It really was a weekly report, the project earnings report that was emailed to our project managers and maybe or maybe not opened. There was no really accountability in place for monitoring overruns, and it was never regularly reviewed with leadership. So although potential was there, it really was not well utilized when we were in Vision.
Okay. And Steve, by the way, let us know there is no thumbs down. And so
Thanks, Steve.
I don't know whether there's not an icon or if thumbs down is not possible in project financial health. So
it's only upside.
Oh. That's awesome. So Rana, when you started working with KW Engineering, how did you decide on the approach to take, and sort of where did you begin?
Wow. So they were kind of in a transitory period. I know that they knew that they wanted to transform, looking for a really great place to start. And so for KW, they used the vision to vantage point process as a catalyst for that change. We started reintroducing them to the ERP, and then along the way, listening to the project managers, trying to address issues that were most important to them at that moment. What that allowed us to do was clear a lot of the, I'll say, the reservations or the complications and process. It was allowing us to clear that out of the way. And then we went and we targeted specific areas in the project management organization.
Okay. All right. Well, let's maybe go to a question for the audience again. So before we ask you another question, let's uh, ask our audience: do you currently use an effective tool for project financial tracking? So maybe a check for yes, or just a yes, or if you don't have that, or an X for no, or just a simple no. And so as we are continuing on and waiting for those responses, Kris, can you share a little bit about your experience of what it was like working with a consultant?
Yes, absolutely. So it was amazing. I can't recommend it enough. Full Sail came in with a clearly defined upgrade path and scope. We really began working together around January 2022. They laid out all of our tasks, assignments, meeting dates, due dates, gave us homework. And I'd say in the last 2 years, we've worked with them about 280 hours. And it was the first 6 months, it was June 2022 that we transitioned from Vision to Vantagepoint. And the majority of our time clearly has been spent in the navigational analysis and really using them as a sounding board to put in standard operating procedures and process development that and leverage Vantagepoint, things that we were not doing before with Vision. It created really a full-time job for myself, especially after our old database administrator left. And it was about 3 to 4 times more hours on our end between my time and then various departmental head times and team time meetings. So between accounting and marketing and the executive teams, they all contributed to the process. And having an outsider consultant to really inform our best practices, because we were really trying to lay the groundwork for a solid foundation in which to grow, has been instrumental to our success so far. Having someone as a sounding board, being in the weeds with us, and really having those discussions with the people who are impacted by these changes, listening to them, and then for us being able to develop those processes accordingly has been amazing. And really, a consultant has been our trusted resource and really become part of our KW family.
Nice. So there was something you said there that I wanted to circle back, and maybe you can answer this or Rana could answer this. You mentioned a navigational analysis. Maybe for the audience, can we give a little bit more clarification on what that is?
Rana, would you like to take that? Because you are the expert.
I understand for Kris, it was a lot of doing, a lot of meeting. What a navigational analysis is with Full Sail, we come in and we interview all your stakeholder groups, not just accounting and finance. We're talking to project managers, we're talking to HR, all of the different functions within your business, and we're evaluating where you want to be. The obstacles that are in your way, and then we help you develop a plan to achieve those goals. Navigational analysis, they can take time, be done over the process of over a few days, or in the case of KW, we actually ran that navigational analysis over the period of about 4 months, and that is because we decided to analyze, fix, move on to the next topic. There were so many needs there. They couldn't wait for this grandiose plan. They had items that they needed to address right away, and we knew that those would lead to other objectives that they want to address once we could clear some of those obstacles out of the way. It's a great process.
Yeah. And one of the other things you mentioned, Kris, is that You mentioned having a sounding board as an expert. So I know that a lot of times when firms have individuals that are actually very capable of answering the question, for whatever reason, it does sometimes take an outside person coming in and saying it in a different way as well.
100%. That is one of the key points of having a consultant is they are trained in understanding what other people need to hear to be able to hear it. And it's just like your friend. Sometimes one friend will tell you something, but it takes the other to be able to translate it into something that can be really fully taken in and digested. So yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Awesome. So, Kris, what were some of the change management challenges and lessons learned throughout this effort?
Yeah, it's there. There was a lot of lessons learned. There was a lot of change, and I would recommend and lessons learned just from the key perspective and of an enterprise resource planning system. You really data integrity is key. I would invest if you have data gaps to really filling those out as quickly as possible. They drive everything else. So addressing any data issues. Really do that ahead. It will help make change a lot easier because it develops the trust in the numbers sooner. When people are looking at numbers that don't make sense, they're like, I don't believe this system. I'm going to do my spreadsheet. And
Mm.
so getting those right from the beginning as soon as possible is key. Something that we really worked hard on doing. I just wish a little bit faster. Getting buy-in from all parties and really showing how it's going to benefit. Like to when you're showing the change, really to explain why you're doing it, what
Mm.
problem are we solving for those users. And when you are in the midst of changing things, really keeping those discussions into process development if you need that, which we did a lot of, is keeping a small group, because sometimes you can get people in the room who will just suck up the time and will not result in an effective decision making process. So really keeping those key people in the room to a smaller group can be very helpful. And then engaging the users and other opinions kind of in a more smaller, broad setting is necessary. And then also having a champion for change. I think really things changed for us when one person ended up being myself really came in to drive the process who was internal. At one point, we had someone else, another consultant, who was really driving this change. And I think really having someone internal who was working with our staff every day to champion the process of change was really helpful. And last but not least, when we went through a transition, we had some changes in leadership, and where we ended up in the end having a team and a CEO who just really forced accountability throughout the company was it's invaluable. And I would hope that most people's leadership can be part of that accountability development for your company, because it will result in success.
Yeah, you said a lot of great insights there, so I'd like to dive into a couple of them.
Sure.
So give our audience a little bit of insight. How large is your firm?
Our firm is now about 70 people.
70 people. Okay. And
Yes.
so for a 70-person firm, what did you consider the consistent small group that you were talking about?
So that was primarily myself, our accounting manager. uh, Really, as an accounting system, that was, we were primarily in the weeds, and then heavily involved with maybe 2 to 3 kind of key team members at any time from the executive team, depending, they each have their focuses. And that was the core team. And we engaged the other departments, like our billing department and our PMs, kind of as necessary. But it was heavily based in accounting, with the leadership kind of integrated into those processes, because everything we were going to do was going to impact them from the top down. So.
Yeah. And then Raina, you also, in combination with that, you had mentioned earlier that you guys spent a lot of time on the project life cycle and
mm.
bringing in those other individuals. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the importance of that project life cycle in combination with the project financials?
Right. So that project lifecycle, we're project-based businesses, right? And so everything we do has to do with that life cycle. That life cycle actually begins long before we have a contract. And in the process of the infancy of that life cycle, we have making sure we're communicating about what new projects there, understanding the pipeline, then pricing, developing great pricing, and all of those things that go along with it. So what we found is we were getting a lot of interaction from project managers. In some degrees, if you go back in history, have some other people contribute to this conversation, they might say that I ignored their request for that finance aspect of these improvements for a little bit, because it didn't make sense until we could get project management under control. With KW, it's really interesting. At first there was resistance, but I have never been so much on a first name basis with project managers as in any other project. They were coming to me directly. We sort of unlocked a sort of would you say hunger or curiosity, Kris?
Yes.
In them, and all of a sudden they really they took hold of it. They started to believe in the system, demand for information. That's when I knew I had it. And they're like, well, but can you do this? Show us this. We want that. And I think it was very, very important to bring them in, because then when we sat down to do things that were hard, boring, not easy to understand, they participated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that made all the difference.
I love that. And I also want to circle back, Kris, you said one other thing that I think is important maybe to say again, because I don't think it can be said enough. And so what I heard you say is that you had higher ups, you had executives that it was a top down type mentality. So when people think about top down, what does that look like? Like, what is top down? What is it that they're doing as leaders?
Well, we've now trained our CEO who looks at his dashboard every day, and it was from that top down where he could, get a picture of the company, and then it is, holding the rest of the leadership team accountable for performance. So it is, being able to trust the data from the top and then demand that action is taken when things are not going according to plan, and just and it's a catalyst of conversations. It's not, we're not shaming people for things happening. What it is just we're able to from the top have those conversations, so then the CEO can talk to our leadership, and the leadership can work through the project managers and operations side. I'm there along the way to identify, okay, well, why has something happened and how can we fix it in the future? So with, I always, I was telling this to Rana yesterday, people need accountability to perform, and we all want to do a good job, but chances are if no one is looking, you're not going to fulfill maybe your the highest expectation possible. But when someone is going to be looking at your numbers, is going to be reviewing, having those discussions with you, you want to have done your due diligence and taken action to have things in order.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. People want to do a good job, but they also have to understand the expectations of what it is that you even want. So
exactly.
I love that. Well, I have another question for the audience. I'm hoping to get more engagement. And so I think this question might do it. What metrics do you find most critical for monitoring the financial health of your projects? And so while we're waiting for any feedback from our audience, Rana, maybe let's dive in a little bit more on what were some of the new processes and monitoring efforts you helped put in place in combination with Kris at KW to help them with overall visibility?
I'm gonna say a naughty word, a naughty phrase. You told me not to say naughty words during this session. Revenue recognition. That yeah. Revenue recognition seems like something accountants want. It's not about accounting. It's not about finance. It's about understanding where you are on your project. What have I earned in relation to what have I spent? That all comes through revenue recognition. It took a long time to implement the process of recognizing revenue, getting that timing just right, informing the project managers. But what it did is it gave us the foundation on which many of the other metrics were based. You can't look at profitability if you're just looking at what you have billed. And I get an amen from Kris on this. It is, in my opinion, although I am a classically trained accountant, I will tell you revenue recognition has never been for finance. It took 25 years to put it into any sort of standards, but it was always there in your Vantagepoint, back before Vision, back before that, Advantage. It was always there to help with measuring project performance. We changed user behavior. Now, this doesn't seem like an outcome or some benefit or something that we've implemented, but understand at KW, what was happening is reports were gathered out of the system. They were manipulated in Excel and then sent out to project managers who Kris mentioned may or may not have opened the file. Right? There's a delay in that process. There is a removal of the connection and certainly responsibility for the information contained therein. So we started making a really big deal of pushing any of the reporting from the system directly to the project manager, removing that time gap. We started with, I'll say their basic, compared to what Kris will cover today, but basic dashboards to just show them that information is there. Strangely enough, we had to do a little bit with timesheet entry, shoring that up, making it happen a little bit faster so that they could get the information they had been asking for. This visibility then created some other demands, and we knew it was going to happen. But the demand for project planning, I don't want to just know what's happened. I want to try to chart out my future. That is still a work in process, but through that pursuit, us going in and looking at just very basic things, it has blossomed. And the group is now very, very concerned about performance on projects before they even start them. This is a big change.
Yeah. So we received some feedback from or insight from our audience. So we have labor multiplier and gross margin and profit. So that's a metric that I'm probably gonna Yufeng, I believe, or Yufeng, is that correct? Has given us, and then Lisa has stated budget versus spent, but also profitability. Any thoughts on those items?
I love labor multipliers. If you only had one piece of information to share with your project leadership, it would be the multipliers. For those of you who don't love phrases, labor multiplier is simply your revenue divided by your cost. If you ever participate in the Deltek Clarity studies, the multipliers that different size firms, types of firms are achieving is one of the core pieces of information that you can use to see how you perform as a firm. The gross margin, think about how your projects contribute, the revenues minus the expenses to run those projects, gross margin, right? We leave the overhead out of it. We're just looking at how we perform and how that contributes to the bottom line. And then, of course, profitability that everybody understands. I love the labor multiplier the best.
All right. All right. So, Kris, now we're really getting into it. So, how did this effort help improve your leadership and project managers' connection to the project data?
Well, what we did was increase the visibility with expectations. And we kind of approached it with the expectation of what problem are we trying to solve. Really wanted to, come up with some intentional actions to take and really, what's the core of what are we trying to achieve. And because the old adage, you can't measure or manage what you don't measure is 100% true. So for us, there's a lot of different things you can manage: labor multipliers, margins. So for us, we were just starting to focus on increasing profits and managing cash flow. Those were the two things that we really wanted to kind of hone in on. So, to come up with a solution, it was you want to come up with KPIs that really measured and flagged actionable items based on achieving those outcomes. So that had to do with looking at KPIs around contracts, profit, revenue, invoicing, and ARs. And so, how did we improve our connection was, well, we wanted to take those KPIs, how do you present them is super important. So where we've landed is with dashboards. So this is where we're at now. We'll enter into the project health dashboard, and that was to build that connection to the data. I really wanted to make them fall in love with their project data. They're engineers, they're used to spreadsheets. But even with conditional formatting, I'm sorry, spreadsheets are not super sexy. I wanted to make the data nice to look at, really entice action, make it, want them to be eager to please, to take those necessary action items based on those KPIs to make their projects as healthy as possible, and remove any barriers to action by being able to review the data directly in Vantagepoint. And to me, the opposite of dashboards is like the project earnings report. And we definitely spent a good amount of time, reviewing those. And, they got the project details report. But at least in dashboards, this is just so much of a nicer forum and actionable forum to be able to look at your data. So I want to let everyone know that you can definitely design eye-catching dashboards using now calculated fields, dash part calculations, conditional formatting, and when you want to get a little bit fancy, a sprinkle of SQL for in those non-database people, that's just like database code. But what you'll see here that's being shown on the screen is our project health dashboard that is presented to our leadership. And it's been an evolution over time. And what you'll see there is the real gem and the window into the project soul, I like to call, and catalyst for action here is the health score. And we got pretty fancy here, and that is now a dash part calculation. So it assigns a project a 0, 5, or 10 and colors them red, yellow, or green. So traffic light people are familiar with that color coding. It's just visual, just speaks to what needs to, what action needs to be taken. So what it does is it adds up scores from calculated fields for each of our KPIs. So for all of those fields or KPIs that I previously mentioned, like contract and profit, there's a formula that says, okay, if a contract is not 0, give it a 1. If the balance is ahead of our threshold, give it a 1, because for us, making sure if there was change orders necessary, those conversations were being had by the project managers ahead of time before we run out of budget. So, we take those groups of, data points, we assign them scores, and the health just kind of wraps them all up in a bow, adds them up, and puts them in buckets, 0, 5, or 10. It's extremely helpful because it focuses the user's attention instead of, filtering by, okay, like 5, 6, 7, or a group of numbers. It's say, okay, today I need to address any zeros. And we have, monthly meetings to go over these, and a place to make notes based on, why is something this way? It could be maybe RevGen needs to be tweaked because they haven't updated their percent completes, things like that. It really having an aggregated score based on all of these other pieces of information, it provides a bigger picture, simplifies where you need to take action. So that to me has been super helpful. You can take all this data, put it in Excel and do conditional formatting, but that health score takes all of those things, puts it in one place and says, okay, project manager or leadership, what's going on? And, if it's a situation where it's a 0 for a particular reason, then we note it. Sometimes there are projects that are strategic and you're getting out to a new field, and that's okay. So you want to take the notes so the next time you go back to view it, you don't have to spend your time looking at the same data. So that's really kind of that's how we increased our connection to it, was give them visibility and set the expectations is what that score does as well. It is we're shooting for our profit target, we're shooting for certain contract balances, we're shooting for certain AR times and things like that. So that is our infamous project health dashboard, and just kind of wanted to say in terms of, a few tips if you're getting started with dashboards is to use calculated fields for conditional formatting, because, sometimes that you can only color code based on static comparison to numbers. In calculated fields, you can bring in these conditional statements where you can compare two items, and also to make sure you have all of your calculated fields added to the dashboard hidden, and to be able to use them in the dashboard calculation.
Yeah, I love that. I call that type of report sort of exception reporting. So it's
Right.
very clear where I need to be paying attention to. I'm focusing on the red, and I like the fact you said it's also focusing on the zeros as well. And so you're giving clear instructions and expectations of here's what you should focus on. And so that's great.
Yeah, and I as a result of both, through our whole Vantagepoint transition and through leadership, it is worth the effort. It is worth the time. I can't speak to that enough. Building that connection and, following through with monitoring the performance, because I'm happy to report for our firm, from last year, our profits were up 5%, revenue 12, and so far we've had the best January ever, like a history of our book. So it really does pay off. Whatever metric KPI you want to report, just have at it, and have those conversations with people to take the actions that drive those outcomes.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, because that's ultimately what it's all about, is the outcome of
Right.
what is it that we're trying to accomplish, and then are we accomplishing what you're looking for? And so you're seeing increase in profits, increase in revenue, and starting the year off amazing. So that's great. All right. Well, let's maybe do a little bit of an interactive question again with our audience. Do you think technology plays a crucial role in project management? And with this one, just tell us yes or no, but I'm more interested in the why or why not. And so, do you think that technology plays a crucial role in project management? I have my thoughts on it, but before we go there, maybe Rana, what is some advice from firms who want to better monitor their projects' financial health?
There's a lot. There's a few things. The first one is make sure that you involve the village. Too often firms kind of go into a dark room, they do some things, calculations, and then come out and say, I've got it. And without having that interaction that leads up to that acceptance in that user experience, you are doomed to fail. It is very difficult to get through. Getting the support of an executive is also important. Kris mentioned earlier that having the CEO really participate in the process, it can't be said enough. She definitely undersold it. Understand that with their group, the CEO that is now like reviewing dashboards every day wasn't a believer. It wasn't until we sort of got the house in order and he saw the potential that he just ran with it. But it took us a little bit of time to get there because there was just so much noise. And so that I want to say, I mean, all the work that Kris has done has been amazing. And all the work that I've done have been very helpful, the accounting manager. But until that CEO came in and said, I am looking at the same things I expect you all to look at, we were just sort of in stasis. So get that support, but it's something more than support. It's almost as if you're simply doing what the executive is also saying. You're not putting anything forward. Be open to change. Maybe you don't necessarily look to change your metrics, but how you present the information. That is the most important part of this. I'm going to say that technology absolutely helps us to get the improvements in the project management function at the firms, because we have so many ways to convey data. It is very important that you be willing to change, look on the bright side, think about who is receiving the information and what they respond to. Often I go into firms and we're still doing the black and white reports, which are great. Accountants love them. But what are project managers using? They're using modern software. They're using planning softwares. Even Revit is now completely online, and it's very modern. And then you can't expect them to then come back and look at something like a report. It's no longer the way they look at things and understand and absorb data. And Kris is right. You can't do anything without the data. So you need to make sure that along with every change you're willing to make with how you present the data, to also support that with doing better with the data that is there. Kris mentioned that if individuals don't believe in the data, they don't trust it, they're not going to respond to it. So it's very, very important to take the time to shore that up. And then the last thing, the work never ends. There are 4 major learning modalities. All of your work should address at least a couple of the modalities in every way, and there's always something to improve. Then there's Vantagepoint, which is always putting something new and improved in the system, so you need to keep up with that. Having a strong person in the firm like Kris, it's great, but it's not absolutely required. We can help fill in some of the places Kris just lives. She's amazing.
All right. So I want to recap a couple of things you said. So one, it takes a village. And I think that's true in everything. So a lot of times people try to silo things, and that just, if you're going to silo, then what do you expect the results to be? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing you said is be open to change. I would say that the 7 most expensive words I hear is we have always done it that way. And so be open to change. Understand that what got you here is not going to get you to the next level. I mean, it's said time and time again. It is sort of a little cliche at this point, but still, it needs to be said. And so,
Amen.
I thought that it was important to sort of reiterate some of those key points that Rana was saying. So, all right. So we got some feedback or some insight from people. So this was related to technology. Cassandra says yes, as well as Evan and Yufeng as well. And then Lisa added 2 comments. She said, yes, you've got to have an easy way to see how the project is going. And additionally, a system provides a consistent way to see and report on results. If everyone keeps track on their own, they will focus on what they think is important, not necessarily what the company thinks is important. So
100%.
Yeah, I love those. All right. So, Kris, let's maybe as we're starting to look at wrapping things up, I have a couple more questions, but what advice would you share with other firms who are experiencing the same challenges you did a year ago, or, they're, just starting it today? So what type of advice would you give them?
Definitely, when you're addressing, deciding on your firm KPIs that are most important to you, always consider like what problem are you trying to solve, and you remember that you do not need to solve all of those problems all at once. It's really I would advise to take baby steps. Pick one, look at the big picture, take a step back, and really identify what needs to happen, what is dependent on the outcomes of the other. For us, it was a lot of data integrity and filling out contract amounts before we got to profit, because that is such a driver for reporting. And it took a lot of time, just be patient to get to where we are today, to have those conversations, to be able to present that project health dashboard to people. There was a lot of processes that happened, from the data entry to, as Rana mentioned, revenue generation, for our internal team to understand it, accounting to understand it, for our project managers to understand it took time, and that was driving the revenue. And then next, profit. It's like your profit is coming from your revenue. If your revenue is off, your profit numbers are going to be off. So baby steps in training people is really will drive success. So just take your time, a deep breath. You're not you're not going to get there tomorrow, but with little chunks at a time, you will get there. And do not go at it alone. If invest in a consultant, even if you have limited budget, take the core pieces and get advice. It will save you time and headache and ensure you are addressing your problems from a successful perspective from the beginning, instead of going about doing something and realizing things aren't working out as you expected. So definitely having a consultant available to support you is the biggest recommendation I can make.
That's awesome. It looks like Evan here is also echoing what you're saying. So breaking the problem down into smaller pieces is always a good way to approach situations. So I love the baby steps and looking at how you can break it down. And so, all right. So let's talk maybe a little bit about what's next. So what's next for KW Engineering regarding monitoring and improving performance?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're still working on cash flow. So we're going to be leveraging invoice approvals and batch billing to increase the speed of our invoicing processes, and really digging in further into the proactive planning from the proposal stages. We're rolling out some big programs and just getting everyone trained who's new to that, so we can be proactive versus reactive, especially with regards to hiring, and really leveraging the CRM features and proposals in Vantagepoint. I just started, it was, on the list from us at the beginning when we transitioned, and then the can kept getting kicked down the road. But as we bring on new team members, we really want to organize all of our boilerplate information, leverage what you can from the CRM system. And as we move into programs where we have more lead generation, really capturing all those activities using the mobile app and Outlook integrations. So those are the three things we're going to be focusing on moving forward, as well as continuing on with our dashboard and health, monitoring performance.
I love that. And Lindsay here is helping to remind me that we do have some extra time today. So if you have questions that you want to ask Kris and Rana, by all means, please add those in there. Anything related to project financial health questions. I'm sure, Rana would probably take other types of questions too, but maybe if we can limit them to project financial health today. All right. My next question really is for Rana. So Rana, what are some Vantagepoint features and enhancements that you're most excited about?
I am most excited because I'm a little biased towards, the project management function. So the KPI dash parts, what they're doing with the dashboards, what Kris did with the dashboard, that's all made possible by the continuous improvements in Vantagepoint. They have so many things planned for dashboards and just functionality overall. The planning tool gets better and better. To be honest, if you're not using Vantagepoint planning, I need to know why, because it's so easy to adopt. You don't even need a lot of consulting time to get it in a good place. More and more improvements every release. So you have to stay on top of that, get using them so that you're hungry for the next thing. And then I'm really loving how Deltek is starting to tie the functions together even more strongly than just the conversions of opportunities and projects. I want to give a plug for the idea portal because a lot of the improvements that Deltek is making are coming straight from users like you. So get on that idea portal, tell them about how you'd like to run your business, get your friends, I'm your friend, get me to go in there and upvote the idea and put a business case in there, because Deltek is really listening in the things that they ask us about. They put out surveys to ask us about a certain functionality, how we would use it. That's pretty unheard of for a software company. So let's keep that going. I think it's up to us.
Yeah. It's been amazing to watch them. They literally respond back and state, whether this is planned or this is in a particular release. And the more you upvote things that are super important to you, the more they listen to you. So interacting there is important if you want something a part of the product. So It looks like Lindsay is also trying to add a link. So she's working on that to add it for the idea portal. So be sure to check out that. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to add them in for Rana or Kris. But Kris, I'm going to ask you the same question. So what are some of the features, your favorite features that you like about Vantagepoint?
The now or what's planned?
Ooh, either way you want to go.
Okay. Honestly, going from Vision to Vantage Point was literally night and day. Vantage Point in general, I can't speak to the benefits enough to not feel like I'm working in 1999 in a computer system. It's been huge. I mean, it's data, it's like food. We eat with our eyes. And if you are looking at Vision, it's really not super enticing. You can see the same numbers, the same profit. Black and white versus full, it's like Technicolor. The data visibility is huge. The access, the ability to look at it on a screen and organize these now into 5 columns and do all of your workflows to facilitate all of your processes is huge. I mean, we've definitely using those workflows in Vantage Point has become such a huge part of increasing our efficiency. So those are the things I absolutely absolutely love at the moment. There was exciting things coming down in 7.0 that when we were at Project Con, and like my heart rate literally jumped because I'm looking forward to them implementing the editing data in a list. When you search, you can look at a list of projects in view, and you can be able to turn off the autosave, because especially when you're doing data cleanup, you're kind of waiting a few seconds, and when you have a long list of things you're updating, those seconds get really time consuming over time. So I remember them showing that off. And in terms of the idea portal, if anyone wants to log in and upvote, there's an idea out there for a dashboard to report AR aging by due date and instead of the invoice date. Please do. I don't know about your contracts, but we have a lot of contracts that it takes longer than just the net terms. It takes 60 days to get it PO'd, and then the clock starts. So I'd appreciate anyone upvoting that on the idea portal.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it if you sent us the link and we can add it to this particular LinkedIn Live and say upvote here. So I love that. Well, so any final thoughts from either of you as we begin to sign off today?
I forgot one of my favorite metrics.
Okay.
I like effective rates. And there's 2 reasons why I like effective rates. Number one, you have to budget and actually think about your project and the spend and the burn in advance. So that by itself is for some firms kind of a big deal, right? And then being able to monitor the effective rate that you're actually working at against what you expected is very, very telling. I love to look at, if you're not in Vantage Point 6.5, understand that Project Review will now reveal to you your baseline from your plan, as well as your budgets from the budget worksheet, and your job to date data. All of those can display the effective rate either at billing or cost. It depends on how you like to look at it. And that's another one that I would add to the suite of the reports. It doesn't have a lot of noise. I've got 800 hours at an average rate of $250 an hour. Well, if I'm tracking at 325, that's going to tell us we're probably going the wrong way. So I would add that. Labor multiplier, effective rate. I mean, profitability is nice, but that's kind of a result of managing your cost.
That's true.
I like that. Kris, any other final thoughts from you?
I can't speak enough to leveraging dashboards. We didn't get to it today, but just another piece of terms of performance that's not purely, KPI and profit based is monitoring your project closeouts. We've gone ahead and on our project health dashboard, which has the project health dash part, we also have a closeout feature. And for us, that is helpful in terms of increasing profits because it increases the efficiency of our firm by eliminating the noise. We have definitely a backlog still of projects that need to be closed out, but we now have a dashboard that identifies the projects that marketing is awaiting write-ups for or has an accounting issue. So whatever you can do to take a dashboard and help really focus your users' attention in any way is helpful, and just dig in and play with it and have fun.
I love it. All right. Well, also just a final plug. We do have a mini demo that is coming up in February. I'm not sure what the date is, and maybe Lindsay can help me out with that. But it is going to be managing AR with varying project terms, and so it's how to better manage with your overall payment terms. So it looks like it is February 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So if you are interested in that, come to the Full Sail Partners page, go to resources, then go to webinar webcasts, and you'll see that mini demo listed there. So thank you, Rana and Kris, for joining us today and for your invaluable insights. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. And we look forward to having you join us again on another LinkedIn Live or maybe one of our mini demonstrations. And remember, your project's financial health is crucial. So keep learning and adapting. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.